What is the funniest joke you've been told that you still think about to this day? The first story.
A police officer pulls over a semi-truck. He gets the usual license and registration, but then hears some very strange noises coming from the trailer. Curious, he decides to investigate. Inside, he finds 50 penguins waddling around like they're on a vacation. "Sir, why do you have 50 penguins in your truck?" the officer asks, scratching his head. The truck driver looks at him like it's the most normal thing in the world. "Well, officer, they're my friends. We like to go on journeys together. You know, road trips." "Road trips?" The officer raises an eyebrow. "You can't just keep 50 penguins in your truck, sir. I'm afraid I'm going to have to take them to the zoo." The man sighs, clearly disappointed. "All right, fine. We'll go to the zoo. But I'm telling you, they're going to love it." The man drives off, penguins flapping in the back like it's the best day ever. The next day, the same cop pulls him over again. He hears those same strange noises coming from the trailer. He marches up to the truck, opens the door, and sure enough, there are the same 50 penguins. "I thought I told you to take these penguins to the zoo," the cop says, now starting to question his own sanity. The driver shrugs nonchalantly. "I did. They loved it. So today we're off to the beach." The officer stares at him for a moment, then looks at the penguins, who are now wearing tiny sunglasses and flipping through beach brochures. He throws his hands up in the air. "I give up. Just make sure they don't get sunburned."
The second story.
George W. Bush was sitting at his desk in the Oval Office when an aide walked in, holding a report. "Sir, here's today's list of casualties from the coalition in Iraq. I'm sorry to say that we lost a Brazilian." Bush's face went pale. He dropped his head into his hands. "Oh no, oh no, oh no." The aide, clearly taken aback, had never seen the president so distraught. "Sir, is there anything I can do for you?" Bush looked up, his eyes wide with panic. "Yes, just tell me, how many is a Brazilian?" The aide blinked. "Well, sir, a Brazilian is, it's a number, more than 100, but less than, a lot." Bush looked at him, clearly horrified. 100? 100 what?" 100 people, sir. We lost 100 people." Bush stared at him for a moment before asking, "Wait, so if we lose a Brazilian, does that mean we have to count to it? Like, how does that work? Do we need to start a whole new counting system for this?" The aide stared, unsure whether to laugh or get his boss a calculator. "Forget it," Bush said, rubbing his temples. "Just tell me, can I get a Brazilian in pizza toppings? I'll need a snack to get through this."
The third story.
A duck walks into a pub and orders a pint of beer and a ham sandwich. The bartender stares at him for a second, then says, "Hang on. You're a duck." The duck looks at him and says, "I see your eyes are working." "And you can talk," says the bartender, his mind officially blown. The duck raises an eyebrow. "I see your ears are working too. Now, if you don't mind, could I get my beer and sandwich?" "Certainly. Sorry about that," the bartender says, still processing. "It's just, we don't get many ducks in here. What are you doing around this way?" "I'm working on the building site across the road," the duck says casually. "I'm a plasterer." The bartender blinks. "A plasterer? You? A duck?" The duck pulls a newspaper from his bag, unfazed. "Yeah, that's right. I do walls and ceilings. Got a steady gig." The bartender stares at him, unsure if he's hallucinating. The duck starts reading his paper, sipping his beer, nibbling his sandwich. The bartender decides to let it go because, well, he's got a duck drinking beer in front of him. The next day, the same thing happens. And the day after that. For 2 weeks, the duck shows up at the pub, orders his usual, and reads his paper like it's no big deal. Then one day, the circus rolls into town. The ringmaster enters the pub for a pint, and the bartender, clearly bursting with excitement, says, "You're with the circus, right? Well, I know a duck who would be perfect for your show. He talks, drinks beer, eats sandwiches, reads the newspaper. He's a sensation. The ringmaster, intrigued, hands over his business card. Sounds fantastic. Get him to call me. The next day, the duck waddles in for his usual pint and sandwich, and the bartender practically leaps over the counter. Hey, Mr. Duck, I've got a great gig lined up for you. Big money, the works. The duck squints at him. I'm always looking for the next big thing. What's the gig? It's at the circus, the bartender says, practically shaking with excitement. The circus? Repeats the duck, tilting his head. Yeah, the circus, says the bartender, with a huge tent and everything. The duck narrows his eyes. The circus, with all the animals locked in cages and the performers living in caravans? Yep, says the bartender, thrilled. And the tent has canvas sides and a giant canvas roof with a hole in the middle. The duck presses. That's right, says the bartender. The duck shakes his head in utter disbelief. What do they need a plasterer for? The bartender pauses for a second, then shrugs. I mean, you could patch up the hole in the tent. The duck stares at him like he's lost his mind. Buddy, I'm not fixing the circus tent. I'm trying to get some work done.
The fourth story.
When I was little, I would ask my mom to tell me this story, a joke, over and over again, and it would crack me up every time. She told me about this guy who heard they were drafting men for a war, but he didn't want to go, so he came up with a genius plan. He pulled out all his teeth because, well, apparently he thought no teeth meant no draft? I don't know. Logic wasn't his strong suit. So the recruiters show up, and they line all the men up for inspection. They start looking at people, checking their health, and this guy's feeling pretty smug, thinking his toothless strategy is about to save him. But the first thing the recruiters do is look at his feet. They glance at him, then look down at his feet and go, "Sorry, we can't recruit you. You've got flat feet." The guy's jaw drops, which, thankfully, he doesn't have to worry about since, no teeth. Wait, what? All that work pulling out my teeth and you're telling me my feet are the problem? The recruiter shrugs. Yep, flat feet. We need soldiers who can march, not shuffle. The guy just stands there, toothless and defeated, thinking, I could have kept my teeth and had feet with arches. This could have been a whole different story.
The fifth story.
A man dies and ends up in hell, where he's met by a big, ugly demon with a clipboard. The demon tells him he has to choose his eternal punishment behind one of 3 doors. The man looks at the first door. Behind it is endless fire, with everything and everyone burning to a crisp. Well, that's a hard pass, he mutters. He checks out the second door. Behind it is a freezing wasteland where people are frozen stiff, limbs snapping off from the cold. Definitely not that one, he says, shivering at the thought. He then notices the third door. Behind it, everyone is standing up to their chests in, well, poop. But, strangely, they're all drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes, and chatting like it's the most normal thing in the world. The man thinks for a moment, weighing his options. Well, I don't want to burn or freeze, and they're drinking coffee and smoking. Seems pretty chill, he figures. I'll take door number 3. He wades through the muck, squishing his way to the coffee pot, and pours himself a nice, steaming cup of coffee. The smell of the coffee is comforting, until 5 minutes later, the demon bursts through the door with a sinister grin. All right, everyone, break's over. Time to stand on your heads. The man spits out his coffee. Wait, what? What kind of sick joke is this? The demon shrugs. Hey, it's hell. You choose your punishment, but you didn't read the fine print. You should have gone for the fire. At least they don't make you stand on your head while you drown in, well, The man groans, realizing this was not the coffee break he had in mind.
The sixth story.
A woman wakes up on her birthday and says to her husband, "Honey, I had a dream last night that you gave me a diamond necklace for my birthday. What do you think it means?" Her husband grins and says, "Maybe tonight you'll find out." Later that evening, they head out for a fancy show and have dinner at their special restaurant. The night is going perfectly. Romantic, cozy, everything she'd hoped for. As the meal winds down, her husband reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small, elegantly wrapped gift. He smiles and says, "Happy birthday, honey." Excited, the wife eagerly unwraps the gift, her eyes sparkling. She opens the box, and inside is a book titled How to Interpret Your Dreams. The man groans, realizing this was not the coffee break he had in mind.
The seventh story.
An old preacher, a renowned scholar, a rich businessman, and a young boy are riding on a small plane when suddenly the engine fails. The pilot turns to the passengers and says, "We're going down, but we only have 4 parachutes, and one of us has to stay behind. But it ain't gonna be me." He grabs a parachute and jumps out of the plane. The scholar immediately stands up, looks around, and says, "I'm too smart to die." He grabs a parachute and leaps out. The businessman, seeing the scholar jump, looks at his expensive watch, then at the others, and declares, "I'm too rich to die." He grabs the 3rd parachute and dives out of the plane. The preacher turns to the young boy and says, "Son, I've lived a long and fulfilling life. You're still so young. Take the last parachute and live. I'll be fine." The boy looks up at the preacher, smiling sweetly. "Thank you, sir. That's very kind of you, but we can both survive." The preacher, shocked and confused, asks, "What do you mean?" "There's only 1 parachute left." The boy casually points to his backpack. "Well, before the scholar jumped, he grabbed my backpack, so I think we're both good to go." The preacher blinks, then sighs. "Kid, I was going to give you a lecture about humility, but you just saved us both. You're smarter than the scholar after all."
The eighth story.
3 men were walking through a dense forest when they stumbled upon an ancient, dusty lamp. One of the men picked it up, rubbed it, and out popped a genie in a puff of smoke. "I am the mighty genie of the lamp," the genie boomed. "I will grant each of you 3 wishes. Choose wisely." The first man eagerly said, "I wish for $1,000,000. With a snap of the genie's fingers, the man was instantly surrounded by piles of cash. He laughed, delighted, as money rained around him. The second man, a little more cautious, said, "I want $1,000,000,000. The genie snapped his fingers again, and now the second man was buried under an even larger pile of money, gold coins spilling from every direction. He grinned smugly, pleased with his wish. The third man, after some thought, said, "I want my right arm to rotate clockwise for the rest of my life." The genie stared at him for a moment, but granted the wish. Instantly, the man's right arm began spinning wildly in a blur, and the man grinned as if he had won some strange prize. The second round of wishes began. The first man, still swimming in cash, wished for a beautiful wife and 3 perfect children. With a snap of the genie's fingers, a stunning woman appeared by his side, along with 3 picture-perfect children. He smiled with satisfaction, proud of his new family. The second man, now even more confident, said, "I want to be the most charismatic man in the world and to be able to get any woman I want." The genie snapped his fingers again, and 5 beautiful women appeared around him. To his surprise, the first man's wife walked over and flirted with him. The second man basked in his newfound charm, feeling invincible. The third man, his arms now spinning in opposite directions, thought for a moment and said, "I want my left arm to rotate counterclockwise for the rest of my life." With another snap, the man's left arm began spinning in the opposite direction, making him a whirlwind of motion. He nodded, satisfied, as his limbs became a blur. The third and final round of wishes arrived. The first man, feeling on top of the world, said, I want a Fortune 500 company to grow my wealth and leave a legacy for my children. The genie granted the wish, and the man was instantly transformed into the CEO of the most profitable company in the world. He marveled at his success. The second man, feeling great, said, I wish for perfect health and to never be sick again for the rest of my life. The genie obliged, and the man felt like he was 21 again. Every ache and pain vanished, leaving him feeling as if he had the energy of a young man once more. The third man, now with his arms spinning in opposite directions and his head nodding uncontrollably, thought hard about his last wish. Finally, he said, I want my head to nod up and down for the rest of my life. The genie granted the wish, and the third man's head began bobbing back and forth, synchronized with his spinning arms. He looked pleased with his wish, though his body was now a blur of motion. Years later, the three men met up for lunch to catch up. The first man, still surrounded by wealth, smiled and said, Life's been perfect. I have all the money I could ever need. My wife is incredible in bed, and I run an incredibly successful company. Everything's a dream. The second man, brimming with charm and health, said, Your wife is great in bed, and my life's been perfect too. I can get any woman I want. I've got all the money I need, and I'm never sick. What more could I want? The third man, who hadn't stopped nodding since that last wish, paused for a moment. His arms were still spinning in opposite directions as he tried to speak. He finally looked at the others and said, Guys, I think I messed up. The first man raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? The third man groaned, his head continuing to bob. Well, I got everything I wanted, but I didn't think I'd be stuck, agreeing with everything for the rest of my life. The second man, smirking, said, At least you're always right. The third man sighed. Yeah, but I never get to say no either.
Thanks for watching. Good luck in life and see you soon.